Welcome to the World of DaaS, a show for data enthusiasts. I'm your host, Auren Hoffman, CEO of SafeGraph and GP of Flex Capital. For more conversations, videos, and transcripts, visit safegraph.com/podcasts. Hello, fellow data nerds. My guest today is Tim Urban. He's the author and founder at Wait But Why, an amazing blog. Tim converts complex science, technology, and human relationship topics into very digestible and entertaining articles on his blog, which has over 500,000 subscribers. Tim Urban, welcome to World of DaaS.
Thank you, Auren.
Excited. I'm really excited to dive in. I'm a huge fan of yours, big avid reader of your blog. I want to start with like some things around life extension, life expectancy. We know that life expectancy is kind of improving across all age groups, but let's say humans on average live on until 120 or 150. Like, how do you think that's going to change society?
Yeah, I hope that really hope that happens.
I really hope
kind of
that
feel
happens.
like,
Yeah.
there's such an instinct, first of all, for people to be like, no, that's bad. We don't want that. I don't know why people have that instinct, but when people were living to 60 and 70, not that long ago, that probably felt right. I mean, whatever your life expectancy is, that suddenly seems like we would never want to have something shorter than that. So
Yeah.
I imagine that would continue. I always like to think about, this is a more extreme example, but if we all live to 1,000, um, I I feel like you would meet someone who's 90 and you'd be like, oh well, they're a baby, they're
Yeah.
a kid.
Yeah.
They're a kid, of course. So you would forgive all this stuff for anyone who's under 100. You'd be like, well, yeah, they're in their first century. Like, of course they're being tribal. Of course they're, of course their ego is like out of control, and like they're, and they're selfish. And so when you had that thought experiment, it makes you more, I think it humbles you out because we're all
Yeah.
a kid in that world. And it also, I think, helps you build compassion for others, because you're like, okay, yeah, everyone is trying their best. But when I think about if we live to 120 or 150, now, of course, no one wants the same exact quality of life we have now, but just extended so that people who are 150 have been living 50 years in a wheelchair, maybe not in their right mind, like just being kind of extended. No one wants that.
Right.
So the idea would be that if you're living to 150, well, 120 is the new 80, and 100 is the new 50. That I think is amazing, and I think we can get some
That
of
would
this,
be
like,
so awesome.
and I think it'll give us more time to grow up. It'll allow wisdom to accumulate a little more. I feel like, we build up wisdom and then we start atrophying and then we die, and it's like I feel like to have a little bit more time to work on our projects, to get good at things, to relax a little about the timeline, because we're on a tight schedule, all of us. And I think it would be good for a lot of reasons. I'm sure there'd be some negatives.
One negative I could see, I'd be interested in your thoughts, is, obviously there's like all these accruing advantages that happen with people. And so we're already in a scenario where there's like, the winners win bigger today than maybe they did in the past. You could see a scenario where they're just like accrue advantage, like, imagine Warren Buffett at 150, or imagine Rupert Murdoch at 150 or something like that. It's just like they just keep accruing all the way through. And makes it harder for like new entrants to come in.
Yeah, I think you could actually apply that in a couple ways. You could say, resources wise, which is what you're saying, but also one of the ways that science advances or ideas advance is not always people coming around and changing their mind when they're wrong. It's people dying and
It's Niels Bohr, science advances one funeral at a time.
Yeah. It's, eventually, the stubborn people, they pass away and you have a new generation that is able to see stuff with fresh eyes. So I think you could say that some kind of things we don't like um about life could be kind of exacerbated by this, right? You could have I think, I guess, a part of what I think, at least on the second part, which is, the stubbornness, people in power having, one way right now we can kind of free ourselves from the people in power as they eventually get old and die.
Yes.
Right. So that's going to be long, whether it's resources or ideas. And yeah, I think that would be maybe a negative, but I think on the other hand, I hope that a society that is advanced enough to do that also is growing up in other ways. And if we're advanced enough to do that, hopefully it's resources in general. I always fantasize about a future where resources just aren't that big a deal because everyone has plenty.
Yeah.
Like where it's like, sure, some people want to get like crazy rich. That's like a weird hobby of some people, but it's like not at all important, and everyone's fine. In which case, it's like just less important resources. In the way that right now it's not like running water in the US is like this huge topic because everyone has as much as they need, basically, in the US at least. And once you have it, then it stops being a topic. So I kind of hope for that in the big picture, like that this instinct to go and get super rich is almost like they get looked at like a hoarder, like kind of like a silly remnant of the past when resources were scarce, and like they're still stuck in that mindset, and that it's just not even something most people are thinking that hard about. It's like not driving them. So that would be my hope, at least.
Yeah, I mean, you could see a world where like the differentiating goods that you have when you're super rich is like the Picasso painting or something on your wall, which costs $200 million. And then like the average person has the exact same painting, but they have like a perfect replica print that costs $20, right?
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, that's just, it's not really your life is any different. You still get to enjoy this like beautiful thing that's out there. And just like the super wealthy person gets to say, well, I have the real one, or they get to brag to their friends or
Yeah,
something.
and
Yeah,
it's like they have cool things. You can go
yeah,
over to a super rich person's house and be like, oh wow, like you have such cool things. But it's not like, if only I could live the way you live, and like if only all these people could afford to eat, and like we're not gonna.
yeah.
That's
They have the
that's
gold
gonna be
plated plate instead of a normal plate.
exactly.
So
It'll be like, oh, they're randomly really rich. It's like, oh, that's interesting. That's like one of their hobbies is like hoarding resources. Like, okay, cool, why not?
Now, you also wrote this piece on cryonics, which I love. Essentially, which is like freezing your body before you die. Like, walk us through the process of this, and what's your conclusion of like whether you decide to do it, whether you're convincing your friends and your family to do it, etc.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic because I mean, to understand cryonics, you first have to understand the definition of death, which seems obvious to us. It's like you're alive or you're dead, and that's
Yeah.
it. But it's 50 years ago, if someone collapsed on the street and their heart wasn't beating and they weren't breathing, they were dead. That was a dead person. There's nothing that anyone would do to save them. It was just maybe 1950 we're talking about. And the hospital, it doesn't matter if they're in the hospital or on the street, like they're that's it. They're gone, right? Today, we don't call that person dead. We have all of this. We have defibrillators and all this stuff in the hospital that can bring that person back and can get that person and can uh, help them survive. So we actually call that clinical death, which is a definition where if you want, if you're terminally ill and you say I don't want to be brought back in that situation, then it's you can legally allow that person to die, but it's a choice, and
Hmm.
when we can bring that person back, right? So then, but on the other hand, today when someone has lost blood to their brain for 5 full minutes, I think that's the definition, or a certain amount of time, we call that brain death. That's legal death, and what we mean by that is that there is no bringing that person back, no matter what. That person is gone. Even if we could get their blood going again, doing so would bring so much damage to the brain that they would never be conscious again. So are they dead? No, they're dead in 2022. They're
Right,
dead
because
with
we
today's
don't have the
technology.
technology to get them back.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. The future hospital would be able to save them. And so the only real definition of actual full death is that you're in a state where no amount of future technology, no advanced future could save you. And really the only way you can, it's like you have to securely erase the hard drive in a way
Yeah.
that no crazy advanced future species could recover the hard drive that is you in your brain. And that's basically when the atoms in your brain have deteriorated to such a massive extent that there's no way to figure out what configuration they used to be in, right? So this is actually how a person is fully dead, right? That's called info death, right? Where there's truly no way to. So Cryonics is the kind of if just say you were in a hospital today, again, you passed out and we didn't know what was happening. We thought you were going to die, but the hospital was like, yeah, we have nothing to do to save Auren. But across the city, there's a hospital that has a machine that can save him. Obviously, everyone would say, rush into the hospital, right?
Yeah.
Get the ambulance, let's send it to that hospital. Cryonics is basically the science of sending people to a hospital in the future that can save them. That's the goal.
Yep.
Right. So people say it's freezing you, which is, that's what it seems like. It's not actually freezing. If you freeze someone, water expands when it's frozen. And so it'll actually get bigger and explode your cells and you'll die. So you can't freeze a person. You can vitrify them, which is when you pump antifreeze into their bloodstream, some form of antifreeze, and then you cool them way beyond freezing temperature to usually, I think it's like negative 195 degrees, and in liquid nitrogen, right, which can get really cold. But you pump some antifreeze in, so instead of actually the ice happening, what happens is it's like it stays in a liquid state. It just becomes so viscous it can't move anymore. So you pause the body, or most importantly the brain, exactly how it was. So you just all the atoms in your brain are just.
And how long does that process take to just like get someone and pump antifreeze and like put them in a vat or whatever?
I think they can do it. I think they do it in like a couple hours less, and it's a race for time, because basically the law, if you die, every minute counts. Every hour that goes by, your brain is less and less in the exact state that it was when you were alive, right? It's deteriorating, it's changing, and we don't want that. Now, maybe if you're out for a week and they get you on, into the vitrification chamber, maybe you can be saved by some future civilization, but way in the future.
Right,
maybe
right.
now
It could be every hour could be another like 10 years in the future or something.
Exactly. Maybe every hour is a century in the future. It's hard to know. So the goal is, what you do when you sign up is you have the Cryonics. You intentionally, ideally you're in a hospital that kind of is friendly with Cryonics. Like there's a handful of them, and so and if you're terminally ill, then everything can be planned.
You just go right there.
Yeah, I mean, they can be there, and you are, the second you are gone, they will make sure to start the process, and they basically, it's pausing a human. And it's right now the other options are burial or cremation, which is 0% chance that the future is going to revive you. This is some percentage. Now, maybe that's 1% or 5% or 10. Maybe someone optimistic might say 50. I don't know the percentage.
Yeah.
And usually the Cryonics companies, I find them to be pretty honest. They're very open about how we don't know if this will work or not, but we know is it's tossing your brain to the future and saying, see what you can do, future. Like I'm reading the Culture series right now, the Ian Banks novels. I'm like 6 books in and I'm obsessed with it. But I want to live in that world. They live in this incredible utopic future civilization, and I want to a super advanced species definitely could take like an old vitrified person from 200 years ago and be like, we're gonna like restore them, give them a new fancy body. And
let's walk through the bet. Because I like questions like there's come about questions like, should an individual, if they have spare income, sign up for this Cryonics thing? And it's like a yearly fee, right? And then this question is also just when, does it make sense when you're 5 years old to do it, or does it make sense when you feel like you're closer to death? You may already know you have a chronic disease or something like that. And so have you kind of thought about like the calculus there?
Well, I mean, if a few questions were answered, if things were a little one notch more certain, where it was like this almost definitely will preserve you in a way that the future will be able to bring you back. Other people are doing it. It's like a common thing to do. And there's no potential negative, which I'll talk about in a second. then I would say it's
And the more
insane that
people do it,
any.
the more likely is these companies will survive too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the more likely there'll be a huge industry working on reviving people, right?
Right.
There'll
Yeah.
actually be a reason. It'll be something that like becomes a
Yeah.
huge
Families will
priority.
be funding it and
Yeah,
stuff.
and there'll
Yeah.
be programs for when you get revived to help you
Right.
reintegrate into the new
Yeah,
world and
totally.
to help you get into a new, fresh grown body or a robot body or restored body or
Right. Just
whatever.
like learn about the new society.
Yeah,
It's
it'll be
like,
this whole industry
yeah.
builds around it. Um, so if right, if we have those things, then I say it's insane not to do it. It's like not putting your seatbelt on times 1,000 to
Right.
not do it. It's like,
Assuming you have the spare income to do it. Right.
yeah, I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
they don't, yes, but they don't make it. It's about a cup of coffee a day. I mean, the way I and it's like, oh, what if it's a scam? I'm like, fine, it's worth it. Like it's for me, it's worth a cup of coffee a day, if nothing else, to literally have hope.
Yeah.
Um, to have hope that a religious person that I'm not gets to have, that gets to say, ooh, when I die, am I going to wake up in heaven? Am I going to wait? What's going to happen? And a cryonics patient now can, they, even if they're feeling it's only 1% chance, well, that's, you're saying there's a chance type thing where you can like, be on your deathbed and wonder, am I going to blink? You won't feel the passage of time. Am I going to blink and wake up in 2250 in this awesome new world, or not? And so it's like a cup of coffee a day. Usually you set up for some like life insurance plan, cheaper the younger you are, which is what actually pays for it. So you don't have to like put down like, they're not going to go be able to collect from you after you die, right? And no
Right.
one wants to put up. So you just do a life insurance plan. You get a life insurance plan that pays out to this company, and it's the whole thing, the fee in that adds up to like, I don't know, a cup of coffee a day or something. So it's not nothing. And yes, like I acknowledge that there you might be paying for absolutely nothing. But to me, it's like, think about all the things you spend a cup of coffee a day on that are less important than like giving yourself the chance to live in 200 years.
Now you mentioned there is a downside. What's the downside that maybe I wouldn't have been thinking about?
So again, I read a bunch of sci-fi and I've watched a bunch of Black Mirror, and um, if you died the normal way and you get buried, you have a 0% chance of waking up in 2250 in this utopia. You also have a 0% chance of waking up in the hands of some sick fuck who wants to torture you or something, right?
Mhm.
You're officially giving yourself a non-zero chance of something also really, really bad. I would say the chances of the good outcome are hundreds of times better than the chances of the bad outcome, but we don't know what the future world's going to be like. We're picturing the US with its laws and its culture and its values.
No, you
What
might
if
not
there
want
what
to
if
be come back in this new world.
Yeah, what if some
Yeah.
future Hitler has won a war and
Yeah.
now the US is something land and we don't, and it is, um they find all these cryonics patients and they want to, experiment with putting human consciousness through 1,000,000 years of torture to see what it does. I mean, again, this is the horror story, right? It's
Right.
almost definitely not, for 100 reasons. I mean, one of the reasons is that we actually talk to people who run these companies and they say that they have contingencies where I can say, if the country looks like it's going to fall to something else, I want to be unplugged, basically, right?
Mm.
If it looks unstable, if it looks like it's, if there's a warning sign, I want to be unplugged. So they have this, right? People have thought about this,
Interesting.
but it's something to think about. That's
Yeah.
why when you ask, am I encouraging people? If I thought there was no chance of the bad outcome, and even a decent chance of a good outcome, I would be the biggest evangelist. I would be walking with my friends to say, you're signing up for this. Like, and like I would be saying, come on, because I would be thinking we could be all together in 2300 in robot bodies around as long as we want. We can bow out when we want now. We're not, you don't just stuck to this mammal body. And but I don't want to do that. I don't, when we have the fact that it could turn out well or badly, I don't want to. I don't want to force anyone into anything. It's a really personal choice. It's a risk,
Yeah.
frankly. But you could also say that if a lot of people, if there was a good chance of living as long as you wanted in an amazing future, it's a risk not to as well, right? If you
Cool.
it's
Yeah.
give yourself a
Interesting.
0% chance of that if you don't. So it's a tough one.
Now you've popularized this idea that we have 4,000 weeks of life. Maybe if we live to 105,000 weeks, what are some good ways to think about this like limited time that we have?
Yeah. Um, yeah, it is quite limited right now. And I think that it doesn't, even though it's not a great feeling, it's humans have we have like a mechanism in our brain that makes us feel like we have endless time. Most of us, at least, like in some way. Like when we think about a week, it's just like one of my hundreds of thousands of weeks or thousands of but it's not. It's not. If you think about from here till 80, from wherever you are,
Yeah.
it is a very finite number of weeks that you
Right.
can kind of.
If you're already 40, you only have 2,000. You only have like
Yeah,
2,000
yeah,
weeks
yeah. We're
left. Yeah.
talking 2000 weeks. I mean, 2000, I always picture, if it's a little, jelly bean, 2000 jelly beans is a little jar. I mean, it's like each week you take one of those out and that's what you got left. These are precious, right? This
Yeah.
is like more precious than diamonds. These are the most precious gemstones that you could ever have, right? Um, and like if and so don't waste a week, basically. I think of it as, first of all, like, um, each week is, if you just start out a week and think this is precious this week,
Yep.
right? That is I think a good mindset to be in. I think you're just you're less likely to regret, wasting time down the road. I also think that it's good to think about, I drew this graph once, which is kind of like a tree of possibilities of life paths, right? And we think about our past a lot. We think, okay, I'm on this life path, but if I had done that thing instead, I could be in a totally different life path. If I had made this decision, I could be in totally different. If I hadn't run into this person that day, I'd be in a totally different life path, right? So we think a lot about these.
Yeah. Sliding. I love the movie Sliding Doors. That's one of my favorite movies.
I've never seen it.
Oh, you need to watch it. It's so
All
good.
right,
Yeah.
I will. Um, And so, yeah, I just think we were built to dwell a lot on the roads not taken, right? We all do it. We think about it, whether we're happy we didn't take them or sad, but we think about them. And then I think we don't turn around and apply that to the future, because the fact is, we think, well, now I'm on this life path and that's what
Right.
happened, right?
Right. Right.
But in 20 years, wherever you are is because of a bunch of decisions that are yet to be made. There are a full branching tree in your future as well. And you're in control of that one. The past one, you can't. But there's like this huge tree of possibilities for your future that could lead in so many different ways. And you're not on a life path. You're on one of many, many, many future life paths. And it matters, your decisions today matter. And that your regrets 20 years from now will almost definitely be about stuff that hasn't happened yet. You have the power to do something about them now. So I like to do these kinds of thought experiments that help snap me into I think like a wiser mindset, if I can try to do that.
Oh, I love that. All right, now there's a couple things on AI. So there's this kind of maybe debate on one side. There's the Ray Kurzweil, where we're accelerating toward AGI, we're accelerating toward progress. On the other hand, there's like Peter Thiel, where he says maybe the rate of progress is slowing, Moore's law is slowing down. You wrote the super influential article in 2015 about AI. Like 7 years later, where do you see the progress, and how good is your prediction stacking up?
Yeah. Honestly, so I have a plan in the next couple years to do a big second AI article, because when I wrote that article, it was a pretty new topic for most people,
Yeah.
and it was like we had a few experts that were talking about it, and I tried to sum up what they were saying, and it was really speculative. And today, that's not true. I mean, there's been so much progress, so much thinking about it, so many competing philosophies, and I can't say that um, I need to write about it in order to really have a sense of of being able to predict. What I can say is that it's just like crazy how much we don't notice the AI that is everywhere in our lives. We just get, once it's, I think there's some quote, I forget who says, it might be by the guy who coined the term, actually, something McCarthy, but basically he said that, it's AI, and we call it AI until it exists, until it works. And then we don't
Yeah.
call it AI anymore, right?
Like, GPS routing your traffic or something
Yeah,
like that, or something like that.
we all live with hundreds of AI assistants that, we all have a big team of assistants, and they are all over the place doing so many different things for us all the time. I mean, you're going to go and you're going to open your phone and open basically any app, and you're dealing with a lot of AI. You're going to be, you just get in your Uber, you order your, you go search on Google, you go search on Amazon for something, you go
Yeah.
open Instagram, like, for better or worse, AI
Even the
is,
background, like how your food gets to your grocery store or something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So I'm excited. No, forget, like, okay, the bigger topic is obviously artificial general intelligence,
Yeah.
right? When you have AI that's smart across the board, then you can get to super intelligence, and like completely different world we live in, like utterly different world. Forget that for a second, because I don't know when that's going to happen. I will say that I haven't heard. I kept kind of, it's such an outlandish concept that I keep waiting for people to say, what we used to be naive and think it was coming soon, and now it's not. It's definitely not. I haven't heard that. It still seems like it's like kind of coming kind of soon. But just artificial narrow intelligence alone, just these capabilities where AI
Yeah.
is really
They
great at
just
one
like
thing, but it's,
slowly get a little better at and slowly make our life better
yeah,
at these
and
things.
and
Yeah.
it, like, we can be living in a magical world just on ANI, right? Like, I'm picturing a more advanced version of what we have now, where you've got, first of all, I'm wearing an Apple Watch right now, right? And other people wear a Whoop or an Aura ring or a Fitbit. I think that this is in infancy, and I think that what you're going to have is the hardware getting really good. It's going to probably end up either in your bloodstream, or it'll be able to see what's in your body through your skin better than it can
Yep.
now, or whatever it is. It's going to really know what's going on in your body at all times. And then the software is going to get really good. And this is the AI component, where it's going to be able to take all that data that it's collecting and actually have really intelligent feedback for you. It's gonna, and then you can connect that to a food app. So you're gonna have some kind of, you know, some kind of automated kitchen where you have a drone that is basically cooking food based on what uh your AI has told it your body needs for
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
afternoon,
Yeah.
and your goal, you've told it your goals, and it knows what your body is going on in your body, and it's going to cook the food and fly it to you in a drone and drop it in a slot in the side of your apartment. You're going to hear a little ding, you open it up, and there's your meal that is craft tailored to how your body was 12 minutes ago. Like, there's just so many things like that that I am excited about, because I think once it's not, it's all it's doing is removing a bunch of low level, low end thinking from us. It allows us to focus on what matters more, a really high end stuff.
Now, there's this idea of the Dunning-Kruger effect is this idea where humans basically overestimate their own intelligence. Could you imagine something similar where AI starts to overestimate its intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure artificial general intelligence, when it gets there, I'm sure it will um do a lot of that. I mean, it's going to be really crude at first. It's going to be rough around the edges, and it's probably not going to be that self-aware, and it's probably going to but I don't know if ANI can necessarily really do that, because it's just not even um it's just kind of a program in the end. And but I could see, yeah, I could see it. If anything, though, I think it's more likely that people are going to be underestimating AI for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and when you think of these, like, how do we create more people to be more ambitious in the world? It seems like a lot of ambitious people are ambitious about making money, but that doesn't necessarily make society better. They're a random hedge fund manager or something like that. And then there are people like an Elon Musk or something like that that are really building projects to like step function our society forward. How do we get more of these smart people and ambitious people to focus on something that we think like maybe long term could be better for society?
Um, well, I think the best way is someone like Elon. Think how many young minds have changed their course from wherever they were going to do to working in engineering,
Yeah.
or working working at SpaceX or Tesla or Neuralink, but also working in those industries, or just working on stuff like that, seeing someone else do it, seeing it's possible to do huge moonshots and going for it. So I know Will McCaskill just came out with his um, big book, and on EA, right, on long termism,
Yeah.
and a big influential book on something like that can you know um, can change a lot of young minds about what's possible and what to do. So I think obviously people who are doing these things very publicly is a great way, but to create more of them beyond that,
In some ways, like
I,
if like money is less valuable, like when we talked about in the beginning of this episode, then then probably like being the hedge fund manager is less appealing, because you still want to get you want to get credit in society. That if that's more valuable, then you might want to move to these things that you're building rocket ships going to Mars or curing
yeah,
diseases or whatever else it might be.
if money is really valuable, I think it's two things. One, it's that resources are still scarce enough. Like someone was talking to me the other day, and we were talking about how someone in like the 20th percentile of wealth in the US, meaning they're like in the bottom fifth of wealth, most of them have an iPhone, right? And they have a
Certainly
place
have a
to live.
smartphone. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
smartphone is what I mean.
Yeah.
And they have a place to live that has heating, and running
Running
water,
water,
and they could send their
electricity.
kid to a decent education, and um, and they probably have a car even, right? And so we're talking about like th- that's just not that different than the really rich people. Of course, it's very different.
Yeah.
But if you look back 200 or even 100 years ago to how the difference between the 20th percentile and the 80th, I mean, it's like they're living a magical life with versus like a life of abject poverty, right? I mean, it's less and less different than it used to be, which is awesome, right? I mean, it's like rather than, I mean, obviously we're really programmed to be upset about income inequality, and of course it does usually signify a lot of bad things about the society, or like it forebodes bad things. But the fact is, it would be nice is that it just doesn't matter, where it's like the poorest people are doing pretty well, and they have opportunity, and they're not, and they have their needs met, and they're comfortable, and they have opportunity. In which case, so that's one way to make money matter less. Yeah. But the other way is what we really are in the end is we're social creatures who are whose brain thinks we're in a small tribe still. We want to be cool in the tribe. We want to have high status. That
Yep.
is, the best
We
way.
all
And so
crave status.
yeah, if I already think money is less about, status is less about money than it used to be, which is good. Like, I don't know, at least among people I know, it's not like if someone's like rich, they have like more clout. I don't think that really, I don't know if that really holds like it used to. And I think and so I think what we want is for it to be cool to be someone who goes into the kind of stuff you're talking about. We want it to be kind of like lame to just go for money, maybe. I mean, or even not. I mean, honestly, like I think people should be able to do what they want without, judgment. I think that would be the ultimate thing. Is like, anyone can. But yeah, I think if in a future society, it's like the coolest thing you can do is like go and build and can
Yeah.
and make new things. And in a way, because right now I think a lot of young idealism is being forced into kind of really nasty political stuff, and that's not, and it's destructive. It's not constructive. And so, yeah, I think it should be. I would be ideally, it would be very cool to be constructive in the future.
Let's talk about this nasty political stuff. You wrote this like great series called The Story of Us, which was like a deep dive into political polarization. And you laid up this concept of like high rung and low rung politics. Like, let's dive in a bit there. Like, give us some examples of like this low rung and high rung.
So this was me kind of looking at how constrained our like our conversations were, partially because of our terminology. Like, we have left, right, and center, and then we have like the far left and the far right, and we have center right and center left, and like centrist and whatever. That is all. Those are all horizontal words. That's us. That's a one-dimensional spectrum, and
Yep.
we're just referring to places along it, right? Um, and people are like, we need more centrists, we need more moderates. But I'm like, is what we actually need more people that have policy positions that are kind of in the middle? I don't think that's what they're talking about, right? And so I made it a square instead of a line, right? So we have a second dimension, a vertical
Yeah,
axis that
a y-axis. Yeah.
yeah, a y-axis that I call like a ladder, right? And so we have the high rungs and the low rungs. And so you want to, that it's good to be high up on that, and
Yeah.
high up on that. And this is important because, so what does high up mean? How does the axis define it? I think of it as kind of you're at the top, you're thinking with what I would call your higher mind, which is you're just, you're kind of in your right mind. You're being sane in that you care about truth, because what sane person wouldn't?
Yeah.
Um, and you're not dehumanizing people, because what sane person would do that? Why would you dehumanize a human or a group of humans? It's not sane behavior to be on the low rungs, which is when I
Yeah.
think
And low
more
rung
primitive.
is tribe, very, very tribal, right?
Very because I think it's a different part of your brain is truly doing the thinking. It's a part of your brain that's much more primitive, that identifies with ideas and has learned, and is programmed to to be religious about a set of beliefs, whether
And it's
those
an
are
us versus them type of
yeah, whether
thing.
those are
Yeah.
religious or political. And then what comes from that is, now I am these ideas. These ideas are me, and that and other people who believe them are my people, and the people who don't are the bad people, right?
Yeah.
We all do this is very human, but I don't think we have to do this. I think it's one part of our brain that does this, and when we're doing this, what's going to happen? If the ideas are me, I'm going to protect them like I protect my body.
Yeah.
If the ideas are us, right, that's going to be my criteria for, are we friends or not? Because if you don't have the right ideas, we can't be friends, we can't date, we can't whatever. And very quickly, you're not sane. You're being like mad, and so it's not that being high rung is some high genius thing. It's just the absence of this craziness that our brain is programmed to do. And our brain is programmed to do a lot of things. Like, here's a totally different example. Is like, if when I was single, I would go and you're in a bar somewhere at a party, and you see someone, a girl you're interested in, and it's like all this fear to go and just like introduce yourself. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, so what is this? Is someone I'm never going to see again. It's a stranger. It's like a figment of my imagination, as far as that should be. Should go up and just say something, and if it doesn't go well, great, like hilarious. It's a video game, right? Okay,
Yeah.
but there's a big part of your brain, the same part that is tribal, this very ancient program that's running in our heads, that still thinks we live in a small tribe, and there's a small handful of people you might mate with, and if one of them rejects you, they're all going to talk about it, they're all going to laugh at you, and you're probably there, you're out, you're now outgrouped by them, and you're screwed, you're never going to mate, right? So we have so much fear of like romantic rejection because of that. There's so many examples like this where we're basically, you've plucked us out of our natural habitat, and you put us into a different one, and we're misfiring. And so
To dive into this
yeah,
romance thing, like in some ways, romance, like who you marry, has always been tribal. Like, in fact, like even by the definition, like you used to marry people from like the neighboring tribe to bring the tribes together in some sort of way. Or like, and not that long ago, people would only marry, let's say, within their religion, within their culture, within their race. Nowadays, like the core tribal is like the red blue thing. Like the amount of cross red blue marriages has been going down dramatically. I think now it's under 10% of marriages. The dating apps, you can sort people based on whether they're red or blue. So you don't even have to see the reds, or you don't have to see the blues if you don't want to. So you only
totally.
see the
There's a
people in your
stat that
tribe.
says, like, it was like, I think I tweeted it at one point. It was like, it was like 50 years ago, or maybe it was even like 30 years ago. It was like only 4% of people said that they didn't want their kid to marry someone who's the opposite, political beliefs
Yeah.
of them, or that they didn't want to marry someone, maybe, yeah, that they wouldn't marry. And today that number is up to like 60% of people. I mean, it's crazy. So what's happening there is that like we've all gotten more into politics. Politics has become the new religion. Ask people back then if you marry someone who's a different religion, or ask people 100 years ago if you marry someone who's a different race, right?
Yep.
Now those things have become less and less,
Tribal.
at least in a lot of communities that I'm in. I'm sure there's a lot of places where people are very serious about religion still, but and politics has kind of, it's not a coincidence. It's like the same exact portion, the same exact contingents of the country that have become less into Christianity have become a lot more into politics and a lot more into, and it is replacing, one kind of craziness in a lot of cases with another, one kind of religion with another. And so, yeah, so this is how I define high and low rung, right? Low rung, you're basically have this crazy human program that is taken over, hijacked your brain, your political brain. And on the high rungs, it's not there. Or at least it's there, but you're in control of it. You can see it and you're not letting it drive things. So you're free to be kind of a normal human about politics and talk about it and change your mind and argue about it and without getting worked up, and be friends with people that disagree, and also maybe to say, I don't know about a ton of political issues that you just don't know that much about, that you wouldn't be comfortable doing a public debate about, and so therefore in private you say, yeah, I'm not sure what I think about that.
Yeah, or going against your quote unquote tribe on certain things and stuff. Yeah.
So when you're low rung, the problem is that it's first of all, it's not usually very nuanced. There's a checklist of beliefs you're supposed to have, a checklist of stances, and you can't, your brain will not let you challenge those, and you will not let other people, you won't listen, at worst you won't even talk to other people, but even sometimes you'll argue with them, but there's no way they can change your mind because you're stuck in it.
Yeah.
And when you're stuck, those ideas are basically your boss. You work for them. You will now, all your confirmation bias and all this effort you're going to put in to continue to make sure you continue believing these stances are the right stances. And when you're on the high rungs, you are your ideas boss. You're the boss in your own head, right? That's obviously better. And so the reason I like this square is because people try to get it. It's not this is a new concept, but they say we should need more people who are moderate, right? They need people who are centrist. What they're trying to say is that we need more people who are high rung. And the truth is the high rung goes all the way across the horizontal axis. So you have far right and far left people who are high rung thinkers, right? There are some great nuanced, open-minded people whose views happen to be, they've come to a very radical set of beliefs. There's nothing wrong with that. And they've come to a very conservative set of beliefs. There is nothing wrong with that. Those people, we want them in the discussion, right? Even though I think maybe more often on the high rungs, you'd have a mix or you'd be a little bit more moderate. I think there's plenty of people that can be on the far ends. And likewise, being centrist alone does not make you a good political thinker.
Right.
You might be very tribally centrist, where that's kind of, so yes, and you can go for
it's like the tribal atheist or something like that, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like the atheism can be just as much of a religion.
So I agree with you. High rung seems much better than low rung, and it does seem like low rung is on the ascendancy. So how do we nudge society to become more high rung?
Well, I think these labels help, whether it's these or something else.
Okay. Yeah. So having some sort of label, hey, you're being a little low rung there.
Yeah. Well, and just seeing it yourself and being like, okay, I'm being like,
I guess if there's a tribe, a high rung tribe, I belong to the high rung tribe, then maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't think that all tribes necessarily are bad. Like if it's by definition, a high rung tribe would be much more of like a community of people who disagree, because high rung, again, is not about left, right, or center. It's about up. So high rung, what would a high rung tribe be like? It's a group of people who are down to disagree. They're not attached to their views. They're not dehumanizing anyone, including the low rung people, because you're not dehumanizing on the high rung. So you see low rung people the way you might look at someone who's an alcoholic. You're like, yeah, they're stuck in a really bad thing, right? They're having. And also
get off it.
You would also know that you can be low rung. So you'd say, yeah, we all do this. And it's not that they're low rung and I'm high rung. It's that I'm right now, hopefully, being better at being high rung more often than I used to be. I mean, that's the
right, because you're never going to be 100%. We all move into those things. Yeah,
it's inherently humble on the high rungs because you're a human with this programming in you, right? So you're just trying to be better than you used to be. So I'll be a part of that tribe all day, right? Because it's not actually tribal in the old school sense. It's more of a set of values, a way of thinking. And I think it's also, of course, beyond the fact that it's just better for you and better, more pleasant way to be. It's also way better for the world. High rung thinkers come to solutions. They actually crack hard problems. They improve things. They can change minds. They're good at changing minds. Now, all low rung tribes can do is who has the biggest cudgel? Can I overpower you with indoctrination, with intimidation, with sneaky kind of cheating tactics, and can we overpower you and win the vote and then try to push through as much as we can. I mean, that's a really bad way to run a country, and that's what's a lot of what's happening. And then what else do the low rungs do? They're very hostile to high rungs. The low rungs, it's not just that they're hostile to each other, the other low rung
They're much more hostile high rungs. Yeah.
Yes, they hate high rungers. So what they will do,
they're
they will frame,
right. These they've gone from the religion essentially, right? So
exactly, it's an apostate, it's an infidel, right? And so when you are when you're in a low rung mindset, it's not like you see the high rungs and you're like, they're up there and I'm down here. No one thinks that way, right? Everyone thinks they're high rung if you talk about it. It's that they
see a traitor.
When you're low rung, you don't see the world as this thing. You see it as there's good and there's bad, and there's this. And so if all you see is that, and someone disagrees with you, a high runger is going to disagree with any low runger, right? Any high runger is going to have a lot of disagreement with any low runger, just because they're not going to be on a simple checklist, right? Immediately you'll get framed as you're one of them. You must be one of the other bad guys on the other, and so you get framed that way. And there's a lot of pressure right now on high rungers to shut up and to not be high rung in public, and to not ask, to not act uncertain about this or challenge your own tribe's beliefs. And the most pressure that we all feel if you're trying to be high rung is from people, low rungers, who are kind of closer to you than, and for me, I'm not getting any shit from the lower left. And there's a big lower left out there. I just don't know them very much. I know a few, and I do get shit from them. But if I'm gonna, go out there and try to act high rung, I'm gonna get a lot of pressure from the lower left, because that's much more my world. And so that's the thing, is you have to learn, you have to take some courage. You have to be able to, it doesn't take courage to trash the other lower tribe. If you're around a bunch of blue people, it doesn't take courage to trash the MAGA tribe. That is the least courageous thing you can do. You can do it, but it doesn't mean
it gives you some credibility within your tribe.
It
doesn't take
all
any courage.
is,
right.
It's getting brownie points from your own tribe.
It's like if you're a Yankee fan trashing the Red Sox,
exactly.
like it's not gonna.
What actually takes courage is standing up to to whatever tribalism is in your neck of the woods, whether it's political or anything else. Standing up to that and challenging that is courage, because it's social courage. And we are very social creatures. For us, standing up to being potentially socially ostracized, that's almost as scary as being physically hurt for us.
Now, what one of the counterintuitive things is that it seems to be that the higher intelligence people are even more likely to be low rung than high rung. Like, do you agree with that? And why is that the case?
It is true. And so I would say it's a few things. It's usually
just like easier at like finding the arguments to support their position and stuff.
Okay. So all of us have this program running in our head, this primitive program, all of us, right? Every human on earth, right? Some, and really smart people, it's like, that program acts like a lawyer, right? It's trying to make a case to continue to believe a lawyer is not going to say, oh, actually my client is guilty, I guess, because they just made a good argument. No, the lawyer has to say my client is innocent, right?
Yeah.
And that's my job, right? So there's a lawyer in your head that has to have, they say these stances are correct and morally good, and my worldview is true and I'm accurate. And it's rather than being a scientist, right, searching for truth, it's going to be trying to prove the case that it's trying to confirm. And smart people have a very, very smart lawyer in their head, right? They have a very good lawyer in their head. So that's one thing. Another thing is that political tribalism is kind of an elitist hobby. If you look at the statistics, the more likely the college that on both the far right and the far left, there's this great report called Hidden Tribes of America. They did a few years ago.
The Pew report, or
no, it's not Pew, but Pew comes to the same. There's many Pew, Gallup. They all find the same thing, which is that it's not just two tribes, right? It's you have the far, kind of the what they call the progressive activists, which would be the farthest left, and then on the farthest right, you have the devoted conservatives. These are like hardcore MAGA people, right? Both of those groups, they're small. They make up 14% of the country combined. They are the two richest groups. They're the two whitest groups. They are the two highest. the education is more to the left. The highest, by far, the progressive activists are the highest, most
Educated.
likely to have a
Yeah.
college degree or grad degree. So these are the elite fighting with each other, right? These are the wealthy white elite of the country, and so partially because you got to have some spare time to get immersed in political tribalism.
Good point. Yeah.
Most people, that's just not, they're not sitting there watching MSNBC. They're just busier, right? They have stuff going on and they don't have the time to do this. Also, college itself, universities, which is where a lot of educated people obviously have spent a lot of time, they are highly political environments. They've become really political. And so they're kind of, in a lot of cases, training facilities for political tribalism. They've become that way. It's unfortunate. It's the opposite of what they should be. But so both the intelligence thing makes sense to me, and also the fact that higher educated people are more politically tribal makes a lot of sense to me.
Now, going back to like our life, you have this popular post about how to make the right choice in a life partner. And you basically have a rule which basically says, like, whatever you do, don't marry the wrong person, which essentially, like, don't rush into that decision. But on the flip side, like, that could just lead to people massively delaying marriage or just never getting married and just overvaluing optionality. Like, how do you think about the trade-off?
Yeah, it is a trade-off. I think that what I said, when I said whatever you do, don't marry the wrong person, that's not quite nuanced enough. There's a spectrum of, let's say the spectrum on one end, it's someone who is, and I know people like this who are, they're 26 and they're saying, I better be married by I better find my life partner by 28, or it's gonna be like a disaster. And they will basically, whoever the next person they're in a relationship with, there's a lot of people for whom when they're 25, whether they realize it or not, whoever they're in their next relationship with they're gonna immediately marry, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, okay.
that's on one side of the spectrum. And I think that they're in too much of a rush. I think they need that advice. Don't marry the wrong person. Then there's the person on the other side. And I know a lot of these people too. And I was probably closer to being this person. And I in a different life path I could have been, who just is you can't make the decision because no one's good enough.
No one's gonna be, there's no perfect person in the world.
No one's
You're
good
always gonna
enough,
find
right?
flaws. And yeah.
Yes. And that's not wise, actually. And because partially, to me, what that says is that you aren't grown up enough to realize how flawed you are.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you think that I'm worthy, I can't have someone who's flawed, you don't know yourself very well, right?
Because no one's gonna want you if they think the
Yes,
same way, right? Yeah.
growing up enough to realize that you are, the way I think about it is, each of us has 15 sides to us, just say, right? So there's picture 15 of me standing here. And there's, on the first date, you're going to see the best 2 or 3 of them, right? You're going to see the best ones. And I'm going to see the best ones of you, right? So it's like those 2 or 3 people are dating.
And by the way, not always. Like, I think sometimes you can see the other sides.
But generally, early on, it's the best 3 of the 15 of each person are dating each other. So it's this little group of 6 hanging out, and everyone is awesome, right? And they're in the honeymoon phase. And there's all the chemicals that also make you see the best things in people. Eventually, you're going to be dating all 15 of these people, right?
Yeah.
And when you see the worst sides or even the medium sides of this person, maybe it might mean that that's not right for you because those particular flaws are a bad match for you, or something that just really turns you off. Okay, that's fine, right? But everyone is going to have some medium and bad sides to them, and the consciousness of the fact that you have 15 people and your worst ones suck. Your worst sides suck, and no one would be happy to be with those people, right? Is a critical piece of information to help you realize that you're getting a package of 15 people either way, and that all these other people who you don't know very well, you're comparing your person to.
Right. You're like, oh, you're only seeing their
exactly.
the 3. You never see the other.
So I would say the wise thing is,
again,
if we live to 150, you're like your first question. If you live to 150 or 1,000, ideally, then I think it's a whole different discussion. But the way it is, also, of course, I think it's very obvious, should be an obvious point, that not everyone has to get married. Yeah. Not everyone has to even be monogamous or even in a relationship, right? Like, there's a lot of ways to live life. And again, this same primitive program that becomes politically tribal, wants to do what is normal and what everyone else is doing. So we think we have to do the thing that society says is normal, conventional wisdom. And I think that people should reason from first principles and get to know themselves. But amongst people who want to get married, I would say that given our lifespan, that the best way to be is in the middle of the spectrum, maybe 2/3 of the way towards the picky side, but not too far. And I still think it's better to marry someone who's really good for you at 44 than to marry someone who's significantly worse for you at 34 or
Yeah.
26, 28. Um, um, but again, when you pick, making a decision about someone, I don't think should require them to be perfect. It should require it to be of something that everyone has their own criteria, but it should be pretty damn good. And the whole package itself, even though there's parts of it that are not right for you and that you would be better with someone else, but the package as a whole really works for you and it just feels good and it feels right. And then at that point, I think you switch on a whole different part of your brain. You get engaged, and at that point, your new job is to make the best of it, right? And
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's like, think about how many arranged marriages in history have been happy marriages. A lot of them, actually,
Yeah.
because I think at that point, once then you get out of your picky side, and now you think you're someone. I think we are all people who could probably end up in a good marriage with a ton of different people if we were arranged to them. So now have that in your mind and say, well, now this person I picked, so it should be. There's no excuse for it not to be really good. I just have to work on it, and I have to.
Yeah.
It has now. Let's work really hard to make this great, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So that's kind of my more nuanced take, I would say.
Yeah. All right. I really like that. That's really interesting. Nate, when I think you have maybe the most viewed TED Talk of all time, which is about procrastination. For listeners that are procrastinators, which I imagine is a lot of us, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I have done a lot of thinking
Okay.
and work on this topic. So I would say I would give two pieces of advice here. I mean, that of many that I could talk about. One is, I think of it as you have the rational decision maker in your brain, you have the instant gratification monkey, right? These are the two characters. You could say it's the adult and the kid, whatever you want to say. Or like the high rung and low rung politics, it's the very rational part of your brain, and then it's the primitive program part. The primitive program part, just like it wants to be politically tribal and it's scared to approach a stranger in a bar, it also doesn't understand the concept of long-term planning, working hard for something whose reward is far away. It understands working on something. For me, I procrastinate a lot less if I'm writing a short post that's going to go up in 4 hours.
Yeah.
Because the reward, I can smell it. So that part of my brain is like suddenly on board because it's like, yes,
right. Or a tweet or something.
Yeah, a tweet. I never procrastinate on a tweet, right?
Right. Because you get the rewards right like there. Immediately. Yeah.
But a book is a fucking nightmare because this part of my brain, it literally cannot see that far. So it does not understand that it's working on a high stakes thing that really matters, that people are going to read. It just thinks that this is bullshit, what we have to do today, right? And it's not satisfying for it to work on that. So it's a huge battle with procrastination that surfaces, right? And even more so, at least there, it's a finite task, and I know people will read it eventually. The biggest procrastination thing is stuff that has no deadline at all, and it's, I want to get in better shape. I want to record songs and be a singer-songwriter or something. I want to quit my job and go and try this thing. I want to start this company. So many of us just never do it. We never do it. Or I want to get out of a relationship that's not working. And there's so much resistance to that, right? We will procrastinate forever. I want to move cities, but not this year. It's just too much, right? So we all have this problem. Now, what I would say is the smaller kind of advice is, on a day-to-day basis, I find that I get into the best zone when I can make a bargain between the two characters, when the rational decision maker can act like an adult to this child and can actually make a deal and say, we're going to work till 5 today and then stop. And then what I find is that, if the times when the monkey will let me work and I actually get that work done till 5, I suddenly am in this perfectionist zone. I'm like, oh, I'm on a roll. Let's keep it going. Mm-hmm. And I don't keep my side of the bargain. And it's very important to realize that you have to be a good parent, actually. It's like a lot of the fault is not the monkey. It's the rational decision maker not keeping his bargain to the monkey. So
it's like, no, we made this bargain. Now you have to go, like,
go
watch Netflix or something.
You have to have fun. You have to train the monkey that this work will actually yield reward later. Because you're giving the monkey the very wrong lesson, and it's going to rebel the next day, and it really will. It's an actual like parent-child relationship,
right?
So
like when I tell my kids they get candy of something, and if I don't give them the candy, it's like I'm not going to be able to get
they're getting burnt for trusting you, right? It's inherently bad. It would be bad parenting. Don't do stuff you're saying you're going to do. So Um, I think that it's better to think of for me, it's very important to think of a yin yang with work and play. And it's not just the work. The work is, I want the work to be black and the play to be white, like really black and white, not gray area. And the 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 more fun and pure the play can be, and that means you're not anxious, you're not thinking I should be working, because that ruins playtime.
Yeah.
Genuine, guilt-free leisure time is great. It charges you, and you can then have work time and then playtime. This is for someone who works at home, especially, or on your own hours. What I've done a lot of is the opposite of this, which is I'm always in a gray zone where I should be working, and I'm actually working like 16 hours a day, but I'm not actually getting that much done because I'm always in the I should be working zone, kind of working, kind of resisting. And then when you're playing and when you're supposed to be working, I call that the dark playground. It's not a good
Yeah.
place to be, and it's not healthy. It's a toxic place to be, as opposed to the post-work happy playground, which recharges your willpower for work the next day. So that's the first thing, is be yin-yangy, not gray. And the second advice I would say is that self-fulfilling prophecies are real, and so many of us are stuck in procrastination or whatever because that's our storyline. That's what we deep down believe that we will do the next day. We think, I will never write my singer-songwriter album because I've never done it in the past, and I'm just we have a deep hopelessness, and that itself really gives it's deeply disempowering to be hopeless. It actually means that this battle between the adult and kid in your head, if you think the kid's going to win, you believe the kid's going to win, the kid will have all this power from your belief. Your confidence in it is going to empower it to win, and your lack of confidence in the grown-up to do the right thing is going to crush the ability for that grown-up to have any power in your head. So you have to change your storyline, and the only way you actually change your storyline, you can't just think I'm going to change next week because you don't really believe it, because you haven't, is by actually having David beat Goliath a few times. And that's, you have to figure out how, but to prove to yourself, hey, you know what, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday I actually did the right thing. Maybe on Thursday and Friday I will. And then over the weekend you think maybe next week, and you have to actually,
There's a habit that happens or something.
yeah, then it can become a habit. But then even more importantly, you have a new storyline, which is, no, I grew up, I changed, and I do this now, and I'm someone who works out now. I just am now. Your storyline now is someone who works out. Your identity is someone. And so but you have to get over the hump first, and maybe get a trainer or something that will force you to. So you have to find a way to change that.
How do you like? I mean, there is a still a limit of the number of things that one can do, right? And so there's just no way, if you have hundreds of like big things that you want to accomplish, like you're just never going to be able to do them, and you will feel somewhat bad about yourself for not doing something that's like on your list. One of the things I did, is I always wanted to write a novel, and I always had it as like, but it's never in my top 20 things in any given year. But I always like create little notes for it, and I'd write them down. And then one year, a few years ago, I just decided, like, I am never going to write a novel. I just said, like, even though I kind of want to do it, I just wrote. It's like, I said to myself, like, this will never, ever happen. It's never going to be my top 10 things. So I'm never going to do it. I just kind of like crossed it off my list. And it was this freeing thing. I no longer had this thing on my list. And, again, I could change my mind in 10 years, but it became a very, very freeing thing to just say, like, I'm never going to do it.
Yeah, that's a very healthy thing to do, I think, to intentionally give up on certain goals, because and so you can focus, or even just, even if someone doesn't want to say never, to say like, CGP Grey is one of my favorite YouTube creators, and one of the things he says is, rather than a New Year's resolution, make a theme of the year, something like that, where you say, for next year or for the next 5 years, I'm focusing on, these 3 goals or whatever it is, and I'm intentionally not even thinking about these other 6. And in 5 years, I'm going to come back to the drawing board, and then we'll see where we are. Something where you can compartmentalize and be in the present moment, not have other things in your head, and just have the things you want to do, and then be very serious about those things. I think that's a great idea, or a theme of the year, whatever it is. But yeah, I think that perfectionism is a very immature impulse. A lot of procrastinators have a big perfectionism problem. I am one of them.
Yeah.
And it's a perfectionism that you can't let go of everything. You have to, and you realize that, like, in the end, you're, again, we have this limited time. You're going to actually probably accomplish a few things really well, and that's it. And we have this childhood kind of this delusion that, oh, I'm going to get to all these things eventually, and that you're not. And so the best thing you can possibly hope for is to get to a few things really, really well, right? And so once you internalize that, you can start to pick those things and realize that by trying to get to everything, what you're most likely to end up doing is feeling like you didn't really do anything that well, or you only did one thing, So yeah, I think it's important.
All right, last question we ask all of our guests. What conventional wisdom or advice do you think is generally bad advice?
I think I don't know if it's advice exactly, but there's some kind of conventional wisdom that I think young people grow up with, which makes them think that the outside world, the free market, is you have to get in there and somehow compete, and it's really hard, right? You want to be a musician, you want to be an actor, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be really, really rich, you want to be whatever the thing is. It's a 1 in 100 shot. You're gonna have to go out there. You're gonna have to get lucky and compete, and you have to just be. And the way I think about it is that actually, the battle, no matter which profession you're in and what you want to do, the battle is in your own head. The internal. This is where you have to work on. This is where you have to win. Because if I believe that if someone who early on can get a hold of stuff like perfectionism and procrastination, and can become someone who gets good at continual self-improvement, and persists for a long time, they get rid of that part of them that wants to give up and throw their hands up, and they're not good at something at first, and they will persist for. I think that person will have magical success, almost all the time.
Yeah.
Especially again because they're also going to be not stubborn about the exact goal. They're going to be able to pivot and to be nimble and to figure out what they're good at as they go. I think that that's all internal stuff. And that person, I would bet on them any day over someone who has all these goals and they're incredibly talented and smart, and but they don't have any of the internal stuff worked out. They're really kind of immature in their head. They're a perfectionist. They give up easily. They're not good at persisting. They procrastinate. They're stubborn, and they're living in kind of fear. That person, doesn't matter. You can be Michael Jordan. You're just not going to do that well in the world, right? So I think the basic conventional wisdom should be switched to being like, work on yourself, and then the world is easy.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, I follow you at Wait But Why on Twitter. I also am a subscriber on your blog, Wait But Why. I love it, and I encourage all of our listeners to do that. Tim Urban, thank you so much for being on World of DaaS.
Yes, thanks for having me on.